During the spring festival when we were playing cards, my cousin suddenly said it was boring and wanted to up the ante. He slapped the key of his BMW onto the table and asked if we dared to match his bet during the spring festival card game. My cousin once again expressed his boredom and desire to play with higher stakes. He slapped the BMW key on the table and repeated the challenge of whether we were brave enough to follow. I knew he was just showing off his new BMW. Everyone was intimidated by his bravado. "Hey Philly," they said, "it's just for fun, we don't dare to bet that high." And they started flattering him, marveling at how impressive it was that he could drive a BMW at such a young age. I hesitated because my whole card was a king. After receiving a lot of flattery, my cousin was about to shuffle the cards with a self-satisfied look. Just then, I handed over the key to my BYD and whispered, "I'm in." The whole room fell into a stunned silence. Everyone stared at me in disbelief, and my cousin's eyes widened even more. The atmosphere turned extremely tense. The moment we both placed our car keys on the table, the bond of kinship among us relatives seemed to vanish completely. But I had no regrets, for he was the one who had initiated this by putting down his BMW key first. Since he could be so heartless to his relatives, I no longer cared about his feelings. My cousin sneered and said, "How much money do you actually have in your pocket? You dare to try and intimidate me? This is a BMW we're talking about. First, scrape together whatever little money you have. Don't try to cause trouble with that lousy BYD." I looked at him coldly. I really disliked playing cards with my cousin. Originally, we were all having a joyful spring festival gathering. However, relying on his wealth, he bet extravagantly every single time. Anyone who has played cards knows that those with less money are completely at the mercy of those with deeper pockets, losing all sense of dignity in the face of their overwhelming bets. While we were betting just 1 or 2 yuan, he directly staked 500 yuan. We all tried to persuade him not to bet so high among relatives, but he feigned innocence and said, "Is 500 yuan really considered a large bet?" He was clearly taking advantage of our poverty. Knowing we were too afraid to match his bets, he joined the card game with the sole intention of trampling on the dignity of us poor relatives. I was well aware that my BYD paled in comparison to his BM Swozo. I turned around and called my girlfriend over. We were on the verge of getting married, and she was wearing the 3 gold jewelry gold necklace bracelet and ring that I had bought for her. I said to her, "Put your gold necklace and bracelet on the table." My girlfriend glanced at me. Without even asking about my cards, she promptly took off her necklace and bracelet and placed them on the table. At that moment, a thought flashed through my mind. With a wife like this, what more could a man ask for? I said to my cousin seriously, "This should be enough now. Are you ready to reveal the cards?" My cousin's expression changed. He gritted his teeth tightly, probably not expecting that I would dare to defy him. With a hint of mockery, he said, "Little brother, don't blame me for not making this clear. Losing a BMW is no big deal for me. But if you lose all your money, how will your entire family survive in the next 5 years?" I shook my head and replied, "It doesn't matter, our family will find a way to get by in. Didn't you and sister-in-law say at the dinner table just now that I'm not bold enough?" My cousin's face grew even more sour. I had never done anything to offend him before yet. At the dinner table earlier, just because I didn't earn as much money as he did, he had looked down on me and mocked me for being too timid to undertake significant endeavors, contrasting me with himself as a successful boss. In the middle of our conversation, my father kindly offered him a cigarette and even lit it for him. But he didn't even bother to shield the flame with his hand. People from the city and young women might not understand the significance of this, however, in the countryside, when an elder lights a cigarette for someone and that person doesn't shield the flame, it implies that they hold us in contempt and are publicly humiliating my family. Everyone looked at my cousin nervously and asked if he wanted to reveal the cards. He took a deep breath and suddenly said, If we're going to play, let's make it even more exciting. That's what will really get my adrenaline pumping. He abruptly placed the cards on the table, covered them with a plate, and then stepped outside. We were sitting in the room and watched as he retrieved a small wooden box from the trunk of his BMW and brought it into the room, placing it on the table. When he opened the box, it was filled with banknotes. My cousin said haughtily, 300,000 yuan. Are you in? Our actions had already drawn the attention of the elders. My uncle was alarmed when he saw what my cousin had done and exclaimed, Are you out of your mind? How dare you take out the advance payment for the new year? My cousin sat down with a grin and said nonchalantly, It's no big deal. I can afford it. So now, let's see if my little brother here has the guts to match my bet. I instantly grasped my cousin's strategy. In the game of 3 cards, a popular card game, there's usually a cap on the bets to prevent them from escalating to high. But when my cousin started playing, eager to flaunt his wealth, he specifically declared that there would be no such limit. His plan was to keep raising the stakes indefinitely until I couldn't keep up and ended up losing everything. Sure enough, he said to me arrogantly, You surely can't come up with this money, can you? If you can't, the bets you've made so far are non-refundable. My uncle immediately understood my cousin's scheme. He couldn't help but let out a laugh and then resumed playing mahjong with the other elders. Completely ignoring me, I clenched my fists tightly and remained silent, for I simply didn't have 300 yuan in cash at hand. Just then, my girlfriend suddenly spoke up. It's okay. Let's put our wedding house on the line. In an instant, everyone turned to look at my girlfriend in disbelief. My uncle, with a cigarette in his mouth, even forgot to pick up his mahjong tiles. My cousin stared at us blankly, his expression a mix of anger and nervousness, and both of them seemed to be trembling slightly. The elders stopped playing my turn and just over to us, saying that the stakes were getting way too high. My father was furious. He rushed over and punched me on the shoulder without hesitation, exclaiming, Are you out of your mind? You're going to make our family go broke? While scolding me, my father tried to peek at my whole card, but I held it tightly, refusing to let him see. Anyone who knows how to play 3 cards understands that you should never show your whole card to anyone, as their expression might give away the secret of your hand. I had 3 kings today, and only 3 aces could beat me. My cousin was the one who started this whole ordeal. Every seasoned player of 3 cards knows that in a situation with 3 kings, it often leads to either total ruin or a highly intense confrontation. My girlfriend said to my cousin seriously, Our wedding house is worth 500,000 yuan now. We're betting 200,000 yuan more than you in or not. My uncle shouted angrily, Are you guys crazy? He leaned over the table in a hurry, trying to push our chips back, and roared at me, Stop provoking your brother. He, as a big boss and doesn't want to argue with you, hurry up and apologize to him. Do you still want him to help you make money in the future? I pinned my uncle down and roared at him. Put everything down right now. My uncle was taken aback by my outburst and shuddered all over. I gritted my teeth and said, And he bet 500 yuan. You didn't say a word when he was bragging at the dinner table. You asked my father to light a cigarette for him. Today, he was the one who started this by putting down his car key. I'm going to see this through to the end with him. My uncle said in a daze, How dare you be so disrespectful to an elder? I looked at my cousin coldly and said, Either you match this additional 200,000 yuan and reveal the cards, or you give up everything you've already bet. There's a third option. Call off today's game, and we both take back our chips, but in that case, you have to bow and apologize to my father. Everyone in the room fell silent. People had witnessed it clearly earlier. My cousin had held the cigarette between 2 fingers and allowed my father to light it for him. Yet, at that moment, no one had the courage to speak up for us. I even noticed my uncle's expression, and he seemed rather pleased with himself at that time. My cousin laughed out of anger and asked me, "Are you really being this arrogant in front of all our relatives?" I shook my head and said, "From the moment you put down that car key, we're no longer acting like relatives." My cousin was silent for a few seconds and then suddenly sneered. "Fine. Don't blame me for trying to scare you. Right, the one who insisted on following, right?" He suddenly picked up his whole card and showed me two of them. It was a pair of queens. The moment I saw his cards, I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but I maintained a serious expression on my face. My cousin swayed his head and said to me, "Guess if my last card is a straight flush?" Deliberately revealing half of the whole card is a common tactic in the game of three cards. It used to intimidate the opponent while observing their reaction. He couldn't intimidate me because even if he did have a straight flush, mine would be higher. I had been worried that he might have three aces, but now it seemed that all my concerns were unfounded. My cousin's show-off move had actually led him into a trap. Of course, even though I was relaxed internally, I still gritted my teeth and said, "I bet you're just bluffing. Are you going to bet or not?" My cousin stared intently into my eyes as if trying to read my thoughts. In the game of three cards, it's all about acting skills and courage. At that moment, he was also indecisive. My uncle quickly said to him, "Stop betting, continue. See that he's not afraid of your cards." My cousin said ferociously, "If I don't bet, I'll lose the BMW and the 300,000 yuan I've already staked." He must be bluffing. Normally, our relatives were always eager to offer their 2 cents and give advice to others. But in this situation, no one dared to utter a word or offer any suggestions, because in the game of three cards, until the cards are revealed, it's impossible to tell if someone is bluffing or not. My cousin nervously observed the expressions of all the relatives around. He had been the one to propose every bet. If he backed out at the last moment, he would lose face among the relatives. Finally, he beckoned to his wife and said, "Come here." My cousin's wife approached the card table reluctantly. My cousin asked her to put her 3 gold jewelry on the table, as her jewelry was much more valuable than my girlfriend's. Unlike my girlfriend, my cousin's wife refused to take off her jewelry at first. My cousin, growing anxious, quickly showed his whole card to his wife. After seeing the cards, my cousin's wife's face lit up with joy. She promptly removed all her gold jewelry and placed it on the table. With a sneer, she said to me, "Come on, we'll bet against you until the end. Don't regret it if you lose. All the relatives here are witnesses. Whoever goes back on their word will have a miserable end." I asked, "Do you mean you want to reveal the cards now?" My cousin's wife said excitedly, "Why reveal the cards? We'll keep betting against you until the end." Greed on her face was evident, however. At this point, everyone had run out of chips. My cousin's wife suddenly took off her diamond ring and placed it on the table, saying, "This diamond ring cost me 50,000 yuan. I shook my head and said, "I won't accept the diamond ring. It's worth at most 100 yuan to me." My cousin's wife flew into a rage and pointed at my nose, shouting, "What do you know? Do you even know what this is? It's a famous brand, a DR." He smiled bitterly and said, "Sister-in-law, I don't care what brand it is. I just won't accept it. In my eyes, it's only worth 100 yuan. Just as my cousin's wife was about to curse me out, my cousin suddenly said, "I'll also put my house on the line." All the relatives present couldn't help but gasp in surprise. My uncle said excitedly, "Our house is in the city center and is worth 1,500,000 yuan. My cousin sneered and said, "Dad, I'm not being reckless. Whatever amount I'd bet, he has to match it according to the rules of three cards. Each bet must be equal to or higher than the previous one. Little brother, do you have the money to match my bet now?" I fell silent because I simply couldn't come up with that much money. My cousin immediately noticed my predicament and burst into laughter. He reached out and patted me on the shoulder. He said, "There are things you just can't afford to play with, to be honest. I'm taking advantage of the fact that your bets are small, but what can you do about it? I can easily afford these bets, but even if you risk your life, you won't be able to come up with the money." My cousin's wife sneered and said, "Are you in or not? If not, consider it a fold. This is the unfairness between the rich and the poor at the card table. The assets that the rich can casually put on the line are often beyond the reach of the poor, even if they risk everything they have. As a result, every time the poor make a bet to match the rich, the pressure on them intensifies, just as my cousin had said. He was deliberately taking advantage of my lack of money. I glanced at my girlfriend and my father nervously. My father's face had turned pale by then. He couldn't fathom how a simple game had escalated to such an extreme situation. Just then, my girlfriend suddenly said, "My parents left me a house not in the city center, but it's also worth 500,000 yuan. I firmly grasped my girlfriend's hand and said excitedly, "No way, I bought the wedding house. And I also bought the 3 gold jewelry. If I lose, the worst that can happen is that we break up. And I won't implicate you. But if you put your family's belongings on the line, and I lose, I'll make your family go bankrupt." My girlfriend said coldly, "Let's not back down from them. If we chicken out today, we'll never be able to hold our heads high again. I believe you wouldn't do something without being confident of success." I couldn't help trembling all over, but it was a tremble of happiness. I knew I was sure to win. I was acting all this out to make my cousin think that I was just as nervous as he expected me to be. However, from my girlfriend's perspective, things were different. She had no idea what my whole card was. Yet, she was willing to bet everything with me. My cousin mocked. "There's a world of difference between houses. Ray's still 1,000,000 yuan short. How do you plan to make up the difference? If you can't keep up, get off the table and stop whining here." I took a deep breath and finally said, "The village is about to be demolished soon. My parents, my soon-to-be wife, and I. That's a total of 4 people. The demolition compensation for the 4 of us will all go to you." My cousin's wife covered her mouth and burst into laughter, saying, "Do you think this is going down? This is just a shabby rural area. The combined demolition compensation for 4 people is only 600,000 yuan. We're still 40,000 yuan short." She then turned to my cousin and said, "I'm not really making fun of your relative, but after struggling so hard and scraping together money, can he actually come up with the full amount?" My cousin said inferiorly, "The way you're scurrying around to gather the bets is really pitiful and embarrassing sometimes. Face is given by others, and sometimes you lose it all by yourself. If you can't gather enough, just fold." My uncle finally let out a sigh of relief when he saw that I couldn't come up with that much money. He said to my father in a reproachful tone, "Your son has no sense of his own limitations now. He can't keep up with the bet, and all the bets he made before are gone." My father still stood there with a pale face, swallowed hard, and said to me blankly, "Why are you being so foolish? What else do you want to bet? You've gambled away our entire family's fortune." I remained silent and just kept operating my phone, borrowing money from every online lending platform I could find. Finally, I placed my phone in front of my cousin. Balance on the screen showed X yuan. My cousin was taken aback and said, "How could your credit limit be so high?" I told him that I had borrowed from 8 platforms and had entered the vehicle information for each of them. I had originally planned to borrow this money for our wedding. In order to compare the interest rates of different platforms, I had applied for a credit limit from each one. I never expected that it would come in handy now. My cousin laughed out of extreme anger. He held a cigarette between his teeth and said, "You're really something now, borrowing from online lending platforms to gamble with me. You know that if you can't pay back this debt, your whole life will be ruined." I said, "I know. It doesn't matter. I'm going to play this out to the end with you today." He asked, "Do you really have to push this to a lose-lose situation?" I retorted, "When my father lit a cigarette for you, Couldn't you even be bothered to shield the flame with your hand? My father was in a panic. He rushed over to me and grabbed my arm, saying, "Your cousin is a big boss now. He is a bit careless about small details. Stop gambling there. There's no need to bet so high your cousin didn't do it on purpose back then." My cousin suddenly roared. "I did it on purpose." My father's face turned ashen. He said anxiously, "There are so many people here today. Give your uncle some face." My cousin grew impatient and pointed at my father's nose, saying, "It was your son who started this confrontation with me today. What face do you have? If it weren't for the fact that my father and you are brothers, would I ever associate with a poor relative like you? I deliberately didn't shield the flame. You should consider yourselves lucky to even be able to light a cigarette for me, you bunch of paupers." The more my cousin spewed out these hurtful words, the uglier my father's expression became. My uncle just let out a sigh and hypocritically said to my cousin, "How can you talk to an elder like that? Don't take it too hard, everyone. He's had too much to drink. He has always been so overbearing outside, thinking he's capable just because he's made some money." I shot a glance at my uncle. On the surface, he was reprimanded my cousin, but in reality, he was still trying to defend his son. My cousin slammed the table hard and said through gritted teeth, "You little brat, you really did bet everything to play this out with me. Fine, I'll reveal the cards with you." Just as he was about to show his whole card, I asked curiously, "When did I say I wanted to reveal the cards?" My cousin was stunned, and so was everyone else. He said blankly, "Aren't you going to reveal them now?" I shook my head and said no. This is the most terrifying aspect of the game of 3 cards. The person who can't hold out and decides to reveal the cards first has to pay an additional bet compared to the other party. Moreover, in the game of 3 cards, the bet amount cannot be lowered in each round. We had already reached this point. Whoever wanted to propose revealing the cards would have to come up with an extra 1,500,000 yuan. I shrugged and said to my cousin, "If you can't stand it, you can reveal the cards, but you have to place the bet first." My cousin stared at me intently. His eyes filled with anger. He said, "You're just trying to trick me into placing one more bet. Even if I follow you now, you won't be able to keep up in the next round. Ray trying to make me reveal the cards and scare me into folding." I said infuriately, "Think whatever you want. I'm just telling you that I'm not revealing the cards if you don't follow the bet. It means you're folding." My cousin's wife was furious and said to me impatiently, "How can you be such a despicable person? It's about time to reveal the cards. Why do you want us to pay an extra bet?" I glanced at her but didn't bother to respond. Acting so desperately in front of everyone would only make her look foolish. My cousin was also breathing heavily with anger. He made up his mind and said through gritted teeth, "Fine. I'll mortgage my factory to you. My factory is worth 1,500,000 yuan, isn't it?" My cousin's wife pushed him urgently and said, "Why are you still betting with him? This guy is just being a scoundrel. He is trying to trick you into placing one more bet." My cousin said irritably, "If I back down now, I'll lose everything I bet before." My cousin's wife was almost hysterical. She kept slapping the table and shouting, "What if he has a king or an ace?" My cousin asked, "But what if I give up now and find out that he was just bluffing?" My cousin's wife said in despair, "Do you really think he would bet his entire fortune just to bluff you?" My cousin shook his head and said, "You don't understand a game of 3 cards. Shut up." I looked at my cousin. In fact, he was right. This is how the game of 3 cards is. Many people have nothing in their whole cards, but dare to bet everything they have just to scare off their opponents. This game is all about being bold. But he overlooked one thing. I had never been bluffing him. He was the one who put down the car key first and decided to raise the stakes so high. The more one invests, the harder it is to pull out. He put down the BMW key to show off his wealth, but he ended up trapping himself. I asked my cousin, "Do you want to reveal the cards now?" My cousin fell silent. He had been so arrogant before. But now he was no longer as cocky as he was at the beginning. Worry and nervousness were evident on his face. He asked me, "If I don't reveal the cards, will you reveal them in the next round? Are you going to involve your whole family in borrowing money to play one more round with me and trick me into placing another bet?" I said inferently, "I won't tell you, just tell me whether you want to reveal the cards or not." Then my cousin looked at my uncle and his wife nervously. He asked his family members hesitantly whether they should reveal the cards. It was obvious that my uncle really wanted to hit me now. But since it was his son who started all this, he could only hold back his anger and say, "Reveal the cards. If you don't, he will definitely find a way to gather the money and trick you into placing another bet. Once he has the money, he'll have to borrow money to bet one more round before you can reveal the cards." Then my cousin took a deep breath and nodded, saying, "I know you can't possibly have a straight flush. You're bluffing me, but remember, this is why I'm the only one between us who has achieved so much success. First, I'm brave enough. And second, I will see my decisions through to the end. So, then not revealing the cards. If you want to reveal them, you have to come up with an extra 1,500,000 yuan. I gasped in surprise. In fact, my cousin's approach was right. He was much wealthier than me. Now I was in debt. Well, he wasn't. He could keep playing until I couldn't come up with the bet amount. I knew it was time to reveal the cards. I had to gather another 1,500,000 yuan to reveal the cards. I couldn't delay it any longer, because if he still chose not to reveal the cards in the next round, even if my whole family were to perish, I wouldn't be able to come up with the money to reveal the cards. Just as I was thinking this, my cousin suddenly sneered and said, "However, I'm going to raise the bet by another 1,500,000 yuan. You have to bet 3 million yuan." I was stunned. I saw him take out his phone and show me his balance, which was over 1,800,000 yuan in total. Right in front of me. He borrowed money from online lending platforms one by one. His credit limit was so high, with each platform offering a limit of 200,000 yuan. When his balance reached 3 million yuan, he said seriously, "The game is over. You can't come up with the money." I don't care what your whole card is now. You have no choice but to fold. A wave of despair washed over me, extinguishing all my hopes. I felt weak all over, while he smiled and said, "I know you might have a king, or an ace. Unfortunately, although I may not be better than you in this hand of cards, you're far inferior to me in life. So now, I'm not betting on the cards anymore. I'm betting that you can't come up with 3 million yuan to play with me. You have to fold." My cousin's sudden bet increase was like pushing me into the abyss of despair. I had already bet all my assets, and with my girlfriend's house added, I had only managed to gather 2 million yuan, but now he wanted me to bet 3 million yuan. My father, a middle-aged man, was almost on the verge of tears beside me, his voice trembling as he said, "I told you not to gamble with him. Our family is just a small one, and he's a big boss. How can we afford to bet against him?" My head was buzzing, and my father had already started to back down. To my cousin he pleaded, "Your little brother is young and inexperienced. You're a magnanimous person. Don't hold it against him. We rate all relatives. Show can we take this card game so seriously?" My cousin said coldly, "Stop right there. Even brothers have to keep their accounts straight, let alone cousins. Who said that a card game can't be taken seriously? If I were to lose here today, would your family let me off the hook?" I clenched my fist tightly, trying to think of a way out. My cousin's wife became impatient at this point and said to me, "If you don't have the money, don't play. If you can't come up with the bet, get lost. The items you've placed on the table in your house can't be taken back." I turned to look at the other relatives, and each of them looked at me with a hint of pity. At that moment, an idea flashed through my mind. I picked up my whole card and revealed 2 of them. A pair of kings was displayed in front of everyone. Everyone was puzzled by my action. I said seriously, "Dear relatives, I want to see this through to the end, but I can't come up with that much money. Is there anyone willing to help me? Group betting. In the game of 3 cards, if one party doesn't have enough money, they can borrow from others on the spot. As long as they give everyone hope of winning, anyone can help them place a bet. The prerequisite is that they can't reveal the entire whole card otherwise. It's considered taking advantage of others, which is not allowed. Everyone must be kept in the dark about the full hand. As like inviting everyone to bet together and leaving the outcome to fate. My cousin had dug a pit for himself earlier, at the very beginning, in an attempt to intimidate me. He was the first to reveal 2 of his whole cards, so when I also showed 2 of my cards at this moment, he had no grounds to object. When my cousin and his wife saw that I had a pair of kings, they grew anxious, yet they still tried to feign composure. My uncle, fearing that someone might actually help me place a bet, quickly said, "You only have a pair of kings. Who do you think would believe that you have a good hand?" I said earnestly, "Dear relatives, if you trust me, please give me a hand this time. This is a great opportunity to make a fortune on Tifer. Get how this guy has been bullying us all along. Now, we have a chance for revenge. It's up to you to decide whether to seize it or not." The relatives looked at each other in hesitation. Then, my cousin's sister took the lead and walked towards me. She placed her hand on my shoulder and said seriously, "I'll put my house and car in the village on the line. Together, they're worth 300,000 yuan. My cousin asked in astonishment, "Why are you helping him?" My cousin's sister gritted her teeth and said, "You're always boasting about being a big boss. When my mother was ill and I came to you to borrow 100,000 yuan for her treatment, not only did you refuse, but you also kept lecturing me about not working hard enough and not striving for success. Belittling me to the point of worthlessness. You even said that I deserved my current situation now. Remember this: if we win, it's exactly what you deserve." My cousin's face turned pale, and he looked at the other relatives with a hint of fear. As the saying goes, when the wall is about to collapse, everyone gives it a push. My cousin had been relying on his wealth to act unreasonably in normal times. Now that his wall was on the verge of falling, and with my cousin's sister taking the lead, the other relatives also stepped forward one after another. Indeed, we were all poor relatives. At this moment, most of the relatives stood by my side. We put up several houses and cars as bets, and the total value just reached 3 million yuan. My cousin was so agitated that he could hardly sit still. He said stupidly, "You all really dislike me that much?" I said, "That's right, everyone hates you. Every spring festival, we don't want to see you at first, when you made money. Everyone was genuinely happy for you from the bottom of their hearts, but after you got rich, why did you have to show off in front of us relatives?" My cousin's sister said resentfully, "It would have been fine if you just showed off occasionally, but when relatives are in real trouble, you don't offer any help. You always act like a successful person and lecture us. Who do you think you are?" My cousin's wife panicked and shouted hysterically, "You can't place bets. This is our card game with him, and you have no right to interfere." My cousin's sister sneered and said, "Then don't consider it as a bet. Think of it as us lending him the money. We're willing to lend it." At this moment, the atmosphere in the room reached a boiling point. My cousin's wife let out a wail, pounced on the card table, and shuffled all the cards. I quickly picked up my whole card to prevent it from being mixed up. My uncle was also so excited that he started shouting, "How can we take this card game seriously? It's just for fun. Do we still want to maintain our relationship as relatives in the future? This doesn't count anymore. Everyone, go back home now." He grabbed my cousin and was about to drag him out at this moment. My cousin could barely stand on his own and had to rely on my uncle's support. However, I quickly moved to the door and blocked their way. I sneered and said, "So, you're bringing up the fact that we're relatives now? Even brothers should still keep their accounts clear, let alone cousins." Weren't those their exact words just now? My cousin's face was filled with bitterness, and he couldn't utter a word. I raised my hand and slowly revealed my whole card. When my cousin saw that I had 3 kings, he shuddered all over. At this time, my cousin's sister couldn't help but flip over the remaining cards my cousin had left on the table. She then mocked. "I thought you had a straight flush of queens. It turns out you only have a pair of queens." I looked at my cousin coldly. It was clear that he wasn't playing the card game sincerely with just a pair of queens. He still dared to bet his BMW at the beginning. He was simply taking advantage of our fear and our lack of money. But what he never expected was that I was willing to risk everything. My cousin swallowed hard and stammered. "Dear brothers and sisters, I admit that I've done some things that weren't right in the past. I apologize to you today. And I promise I won't do it again, but things on the card table should never be taken too seriously." At this moment, my cousin's wife decided to go all out and said anxiously, "So what if we place the bets? Can't we just refuse to pay? If you have the guts, kill us today. We have no money, but we're willing to risk our lives." The once arrogant and overbearing family of my cousin now looked extremely ugly. The more they used to show off, the more they lost face today. I said, "We all know that you definitely won't mortgage the factory and the house to me when you go back, but you can't take away the things you put on the card table today." My cousin was speechless when his wife saw that he didn't respond. She pushed him urgently and said, "Hurry up and think of a way. Even the items on the table are worth 500,000 yuan and a BMW." My cousin's sister said coldly, "Stop asking him to find a solution. If you don't leave these things behind today, you won't be able to leave this room. Everyone who has played cards knows that gambling debts aren't really debts in a traditional sense because they're almost impossible to collect. Only the items that are actually placed on the card table are considered real bets, because if you lose, you can't take them away." My cousin's wife burst into tears immediately. She raised her hand and slapped my cousin hard across the face, crying, "Why did you have to show off in the first place? They were just betting 1 or 2 yuan. That you had to bet 500 yuan on later? You thought you hadn't shown off enough and even bet your BMW." My cousin got angry and pushed his wife hard, saying, "Weren't you also pretending with me when you saw my whole card?" My cousin's wife cried, "I was just acting to help you. I pretended that you had a straight flush to scare them away who knew that he would even borrow money just to teach you a lesson. How hated you must be in normal times." My cousin was left speechless and could only look at my uncle pleadingly. My uncle stood there, blushing with embarrassment. Finally, he took a deep breath and said, "Give them the things we can afford to lose this money. Anyway, if we lose our dignity, we won't be able to come back home in the future." My cousin's wife cried, "Dad, are we really going to give them the things?" My uncle gritted his teeth and said in a resentful tone, "Hey, that is a bet. You have to accept the consequences." I smiled. All the relatives present also laughed, because if they really wanted to abide by the principle of accepting the consequences of a bet, they should go and transfer the ownership of the house right now. And everyone could see their thoughts clearly as long as they could still come back to this home. They could still claim the demolition compensation in the future, which would help them make up for their losses to the greatest extent. In the end, they still had to lose this money. I knew that at the card table, one must always leave some leeway. One should never push the opponent to a desperate situation, because otherwise, the opponent might resort to violence, and there could be bloodshed at the table. This money could make my cousin and his family feel extremely uncomfortable, but it wouldn't push them to the point of killing. The relatives collected the money, and then I opened the door and said coldly, "You can leave now. I understand you, because if I were the one who lost today, I wouldn't transfer the ownership of the house to you either." My girlfriend smiled playfully and said, "That's right. That's why I was willing to bet my house with you. I'm not stupid. Gambling debts aren't real debts. And what's the value of face? Only a fool would sell their house to pay off gambling debts. If you was, we could just go home and deny it." I was amused by my girlfriend. I liked her even more for her intelligence, truly. With a wife like this, what more could a husband ask for? My cousin cast a reluctant glance back at the card table. My uncle pulled his arm and dragged him out, scolding him angrily. I've never seen anyone as stupid as you. Why did you bet your BMW in the first place? I watched them hurry out and said with a smile, Uncle, which day of the Lunar New Year should I come to pay you a visit this year? He turned around and gave me a fierce glare. My uncle gritted his teeth and said, Don't come this year. I thought it was quite good. I could even save some money. The relatives held the money and praised me for being amazing. They said that they had long been annoyed by my cousin's family, who always flaunted their wealth in front of the poor relatives and even bet 500 yuan in a simple card game among relatives. I took the money and the gold jewelry, and then I handed the car key to them with a smile. I said, Everyone who's here today deserves a share. Sell this BMW and divide the money equally. I wouldn't have won without your help. Everyone quickly praised me for being generous. I really didn't expect that. Excluding the BMW, I won 500,000 yuan from playing cards with my cousin. Most importantly, all of this was legal. During the Spring Festival, we joined a tour group and came to Macau to see the world originally. We signed up for a low-cost tour and agreed with the tour guide that we wouldn't buy anything no matter how he tried to persuade us. Would have thought that my cousin insisted on showing off that he could obtain cross-border vehicle licenses and drove his BMW here. Moreover, he insisted on declaring a large amount of cash at the customs and boasted to us that he was going to have a great time gambling in the casino. However, when we were at the card table, my uncle accidentally let it slip that the money was the advance payment for their factory, and my cousin had no right to use it for gambling. To be fair, he really loved to show off. Before even going to a big casino, he couldn't wait to find a smaller gambling place. In order to pretend to be a successful person in front of us, he repeatedly confirmed with the venue that it was a legally operating place and then started playing cards with us. I guess he knew that the people in big casinos were too wealthy to tolerate his behavior, so he took the opportunity to start a game in a small casino, just to bully us poor relatives. It's impossible to mortgage the house because, according to the law, if we were to settle the gambling debts on the Chinese mainland after returning from Macau, we would be breaking the law. Gambling debts incurred in Macau must be settled in Macau to be legal and cannot be carried over to the mainland for settlement. We can only blame my cousin for actually bringing so much cash with him. However, to my great surprise, after our tour group returned to the Chinese mainland, my cousin and his family didn't come back for the Spring Festival. Perhaps they really felt that they had lost all their face and were too ashamed to return. I tried to check their WeChat moments and found that they had even blocked me. I couldn't help but laugh, but it didn't matter. Such relatives were not worth having anyway. I just want to advise some friends who have made a fortune. It's a good thing to be wealthy, but don't show off blindly in front of others. Especially, don't look down on others and criticize them for not working hard. After all, others don't depend on you for their livelihood. What's the point of showing off all the time?